going to invite up onto the podium an expert of sorts. As I said, I've learned so much from this gentleman. I've been quoting him for about 3 or 4 years around leather, around the world actually. Mr. Bello Yakasai, please come and take us through the next session, and please encourage him to come up. I will let him tell you the title of the session. Mr. Yakasai.
Thank you very much, Akin. Thank you. I know you'll always be my friend. The only thing is you are not carrying me around when you globetrot. And I've been begging you for years now. Thank you very much. And I will try to ensure that people don't go to sleep after this semi-lunch, because it's much more than a coffee break. I ate and I'm belly full. The fatter the better, so they say. Unfortunately, apart from the fact that cola has taken my share, I'm still very lean. In spite of working for 6 years to ensure that our animals are fatter, I still don't have a pot belly, and I don't think I will have. But basically, the idea behind feed finishing is to address the fact that it is much easier to grow more meat on a standing animal than to recreate another one. So going through husbandry, for a cow to be fully matured for slaughter, you need between 3 to 4 years. That's if you slaughter a young cow of 18 months to 1 year, 2 years. But you can grow meat on a standing animal every day. Every day. And this is practical and doable. And that's what we try to prove. The second thing we try to prove on this is that there's a lot more to be done to reduce all the issues I've mentioned before: conflicts, cost of meat, quality of meat, meat consistency, and eatability. So we could learn a lot and do a lot to make sure that Nigeria is in line with the developing world in terms of meat quality. And as you can see, one of the key problems with the meat sector in Nigeria is that we eat what we call hot meat. Nigeria do not cure meat. We slaughter the animal, and actually it happened to us. We went to Dambata market. We saw a goat. It was bought before us. It was slaughtered before us, and they made suya with it before us, and we ate the suya before we left the market. So from a living goat to a suya in our stomach, that's how we left the market. That's how Nigerians eat meat. Hot, 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 hot. However, because meat sector is now a growing business, there's need for continuous improvement. And feed finishing is one of the ways that you start improving right from the production stage. Can we move on? Can we move on? Okay. So what is feed finishing? In the life cycle of an animal, once it is delivered, it goes through the growing system before it becomes a full-fledged animal ready for slaughter. Within that cycle, there's the rearing. Then when it gets to about 1 year, 1.5 years old, it's taken for back grounding. Within that time, it doesn't matter what you feed it, so long as it has some level of rich nutrition, it is a growing stage. But post-back grounding, then you go to finishing. At finishing, what you want is to lay enough meat with consistent quality that will attract the market interest. And that's the portion that we try to pick up. So we're not in livestock, I repeat, but we are in growing meat on a fully fledged young animals. So to start with, there was no supplement for ruminant in Nigeria. We all know that you can buy fish feed, you can buy chicken feed in all the shops across the country, but you don't know where to buy ruminant feed. No supplement. So first of all, is the question to be answered is where, how, and how can we make supplement available? Believe me, when we started, we had to pay for the production of the past batch 5 metric tons. we have to pay fully for the production, transportation, and distributive community that we want to make a file. And this is why, though we are following an M4P principle, sometimes M4P plus create additional value and benefit. So ordinarily, under the M4P principle, we may not do that. But it's allowed that you can now start a pilot to ensure that you create awareness, then you move full-fledged into M4P development system. So we now use the community. We didn't pay the community, but we gave them the feed more or less for free. And they tried, and that's where it all began. Feed companies had to be cajoled, coached, begged to start it. Even though every one of them knows that there is potential for the market there, but having had the experience of captured fishery, experience in chicken production, another experience they're having in turkey production, they realize that to be able to launch into this market and make money, it will take years. And we know the attitude of investment in Nigeria. Short time, quick return, finish. After all, even the banking sector doesn't want to invest in the long term this thing. And actually, they are the worst now. I think they've taken the lead now. So then that's one. We need those who will be able to carry the message, teach people, pass the skill, coach. And we realize that in this country, almost all paramedics, all veterinary officers, all livestock specialists are, in fact, 90% employed by the public sector. 90% employed by the public sector. So if you want a paramedic, for example, you have to borrow from the public sector or wait till he retires. And then he starts his private business. Or use him illegally within the office hours in the public office to come and work in your farm. That's the only way you can get a paramedic service. Anywhere you see paramedic shop, if you ask, maybe the owner is working for a state government or for federal government, and he has a shop. And if you go to any livestock market, there are paramedic shops that are owned by the people appointed to man paramedic activities by the government in that market. Any market. So basically, we now have to find a way to get paramedic that will help us pass the message. And now the big job. Our tradition, according to the northern tradition where the animals are grown, nobody grows homestead-owned animal for profit. It's never a business. It's a security in case you need money. It has never been grown. In the homestead, it's never been grown as a business. Not even the Fulani who will move around with a large number of cows. No. It's a tradition, but when you have need, you pick one, you sell. Even chicken in the rural areas are not grown for the consumption of the family. They are grown to be sold in the market when there is need. So we had to deal with that. And next slide, please. And this is how we started. We started by focusing on ram for Salah. Over 24 million rams are killed in Nigeria during each Salah. That's the Eid al-Kabir, not Eid al-Fitr. It's complemented further because mostly the Eid al-Kabir, as they call the one they call Big Salah, come close to Christmas. So it's complement. In fact, there was 3 years ago, the same day of Christmas, and that was the most enjoyable year I had because I was running from party to party, from house to house. I go to a Muslim house, I eat. I go to a Christian house and dance. I shake the food away, and then go to another Muslim house and eat again. That's how I spend my day. Fantastic day. I wish every Christmas and Salah would come on the same day. Fantastic day. We started with that opportunity. All right, let's grow livestock. Let's show example with the Salah rams. And then we isolated some communities and intensely extend to them through parabets. And that is having developed the formula and got the companies that were producing. Then we were using 3 companies, only 3 companies, Animal Care, Feed Masters, and Hybrid. So we now supply this. We virtually paid for the transportation. We don't pay for the feed, but we paid for the transportation. So that at least it will still remain, the cost will remain low. So we did that. Amazingly, the stories we hear from these people is fantastic. Here you keep a ram for 1 year before you take it to the market, and it adds 2 to 3 kg. But using our method, you keep a ram for 50 days, it adds 0.3 of a kg every day, isn't it? Every day. You keep a cow for 2 years or 1.5 years, totally it adds 20 kg to its weight. Here we have a system where every day you can have 1 kg added. So keep it for 90 days, you have 90 kg additional. So it become like the talk of the town. And you know the way the market buys. They look at the animal, touch the back here. If they feel this back is like Bello's with all sorts of bones, they don't sell. But if you feel the back is like collars now, with a lot of meat, then yes, it's a good animal. That's how they buy it. Look and touch, nothing more. And then you make your money out of how good you keep your animal and how meaty it is, especially here. So basically, people made a lot of money. And then we tried another with women group. And unfortunately, that has the other story of it. We tried to introduce loan from the bank. And for those of you who are working on financing value chain, we need to understand where to finance. We tried 4 goats per woman, and we have 50 women, and we got microfinance bank to give them loans using the indices that we've already developed. And we realized that unless you have up to 8 goats, you will end up making the farmer Fuara. Then you met him. And you are a development worker. We realized with a bank loan at less than 10% interest rate, a farmer could not break even if he has just 4 goats. So we have to redo the model. And actually, for our knowledge, this is not the first time. I did some work with Heineken's and sorghum producers when we are developing alternative source of malt. When the malt world when the bioenergy, biofuel become the order of the thing, and a lot of malt and barley and things, a lot of barley and wheat and rice are gone for the energy sector. So malt costs become huge. Importing becomes impossible. So we had to develop a sorghum variety, which gives about 17% malting quality. While we were doing that, the tradition of growing sorghum here was zero fertilization. Even though the yield was about 1 ton and 1.5 tons per hectare, but it's zero fertilization. 1 soil tilling, 1 weeding. We introduced new practice, fertilizer, 2 weedings, 1 tilling, blah, 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 blah. When they finished, they got up to 4 tons per hectare. But it's not good enough to compensate for the additional input of labor and fertilizer into that. So we realized every farmer that participated with us that time really lost money. Even though he will sing the song of having more from a hectare, but actually if you do the figures, he lost money. So we had to review that model. And I think that is one of the learning that is not on this sheet, and we should be conscious about. We should test the model and see which one works before we move forward. It's a painful enterprise because you have different goals for you to achieve within a period of time, and you are not certain whether what you are doing will give you that goal. But rather than covering your weakness out, it is best to say, look, Dipit, I did not achieve your goal, but this is what I found out. I'll go back and redo it again. And we did that with James Wan, and thanks to Andy and others, they give us the latitude, and we come back with a beautiful model that is working. By the end of 2014, we are in 3 states, and we are working with over 27 feed millers, and we had this feed under ATA distributed as part of the government subsidy, and we had, we'll see the figures. Let me leave the figures, how many farmers we have. So, but again, this is another thing. Before you go on, know the people you'll be dealing with. At the higher, upper level of the value chain are the farmers. what are their income level. Now, ours is to isolate how much does livestock holding contribute to household economy in the rural area. And we found that as much as 31% of the rural household economy is contributed by livestock. Even the earthwhile agriculture we're talking about, we keep saying, oh, we dependent on agriculture. People don't bring livestock into it. They think agriculture is the farming, the crop production. I think that's what it contributes to the household, 16%. So we know we are onto a big thing, next just to labor sold by the household. So we know if we can impact on this, we are going to impact hugely on the lives of the rural household. So that's what encourages us to pick it up and run with it. Let's move on. Okay, we did some comparison before we wind up. And this is from a data taken from years, about 3 years of implementation. And this is the average, we come to an average. And we will see the figures. Just look at the graph without the figures. A cattle, this is traditional, not taking time use. Remember, we use 90 days for cattle, and locally, the least you keep a cattle is 1 year. That is not taken into consideration. We're just taking of the physical input that can be readily turned into cash. Look at the difference. Look at the difference in sheep. Move on, next slide. The figures are there. All right, here we go. If you feed a cattle with the supplementary feed for 90 days, it's sold for 53,000 averagely, more than cattle you feed at home for 1 year. And therefore, you make up to 25% more additional profit. And, additional sales. And then profit goes up to 40% more. So hey, 90 days, I don't have to tend you for 1 year, just for 90 days, and I make 40% more on my profit. What a better deal can you give to a rural dweller? So next slide. If you keep a goat for 50 days or maximum 60 days, you make an increased sale of 12,000 naira. Huh? 40, 45 days. Well, I'm just being conservative. I just want people not to be over-optimistic. Let's even say 50, 60 days. But the actual recommendation from us is 40 to 45 days. Now, your profit is raised by 44%. Remember, on the other hand, you can decide not to use it and keep your goat using the normal household waste, farm waste, but you keep it for 1 year to attend this growth. For 1 year for it to ascend the same growth that you would attain in 43 days. Let's move on. On. Again. 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 Good. You're done. Now, look at the figures. Within the GEM 1 period, we're able to put 250,000, $250,000 livestock under this feeding. And directly we work with 52,000 enterprise, if you want to call them, because we call them enterprise because this is now no longer for traditional saving, it's for profit. So we call each owner of an animal an enterprise, whether it's a whole household or it's a single individual. Because we're now dealing with people keeping animals to make profit. They're keeping their books, they're working their figures. At the end of the day, when they sell, they're discounting and compounding. So we were able to raise this much additional income on the average for cattle and for ram. And while we're going, when we're doing the completion report, we realized over 39,000 enterprises are copying this. Those that we have not reached directly in any way. So it's growing. To us, that figure is more important than anyone here because it doesn't take a kobo from defeat. It's a farmer seeing a farmer doing something and copying from him because it is good. So it costs us nothing. No time wasted, no money, but we're getting 35,000 people. Let's go next slide. Okay, these are our partners. I think we don't need to go through it, but a total of 91,000 farm enterprises have been affected, and 17 million pounds income generated to individual families, these families, and the enterprise that supply feed and the parabets. Next slide. Simple. You don't need to do a different cage. You know, unlike the chicken, you have or battery or thing. It's just the same way you keep your animal. It's the same way you keep this. The only thing you do is ensure that other animals don't come and share the feed with it, and that it will have water all the time, and there will be food. That's all. Simple technology, incremental changes, not necessarily worrying or upsetting the normal order of the household. Next. Okay. Again, I keep saying, James, thank you, not for this occasion. Thank you for taking over this. Now they moved it to additional states, and I'm sure they're making huge, huge inroad. And please, I know James is closing. I know there will be other projects. The advice is that we will not have the whole of the nation taking over this in the next 2 years, 3 years, or even 5 years. It's going to be slow. It's going to be incremental because of what? Because it involves changing in culture, changing in psyche, in belief. In my own house, they don't believe that you should give animal water every day. In fact, they go on rearing, come back and drink water only once in a day. Here you are saying, don't make sure that water is ad lib. So that changing of psyche and a little bit of increase in labor could be the difference between good animal, fit finished, and normal animal. And one more slide, please. Thank you.